Okay, we are in Senate Committee on Institutions. Today is Wednesday, May 14th. And what we're discussing today is the Windsor facility, which is a large piece of property that is in the town of Windsor that was formerly used for corrections and other things. It was a farm also. So we are going to be speaking with representatives from the town. And then we also have the regional commission. We'll introduce ourselves so that you know who we are. Wendy Harrison, I represent the Wyndham District.
Sam Douglas, I represent the Orleans County District.
And I'm Rob Plunkett, the Bennington District.
And you know Senator Major.
Joe Major from Windsor.
Okay, so the order that we have you is Tom Marsh going first, Thomas Kennedy, then Jeffrey Johnson. Does that make sense to you folks?
Works for me. I'll make sure I leave plenty for the others to say.
Okay, great. And then we also have the commissioner of BGS, Wanda Manoli, in the room, and she can speak to it also. Okay, great. So go ahead. Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the opportunity, everybody. I'll expect that there's at least some working history of the property since it is closed back in 2017, and the fact that it sits among about 800 other acres that's been designated a wildlife management area and very strongly supported by the community since that decision was made. There's a long list of reports that the state has commissioned over the years regarding the appropriate uses of this facility and its strengths and weaknesses. And during that entire time, there's been a lot of community input. And I know on our end, we are appreciative of the amount of exposure that our community has been given and to play a role in those different reports that have been given. In addition, what you may or may not be aware of is every year we circulate a budget and a community survey. It's done in November, December of each year in advance of our budget process, and usually there are questions on it that relate to the issue, the primary issue of the day. And for many of those years, the prison property has been that issue as a different reports have been commissioned. And I think one of the key components of those surveys, and we normally get somewhere around 250 or so respondents, is that although the questions have been asked differently, sometimes they're, a either or choice, or sometimes the questions were, would you support this? And would you support this? And would you support this? The common themes that came out of that is the community here definitely does not want another prison. Like that is like less than 10%, no matter how we ask the question. And the community does want development. And that is consistent in support in the low 60s percentiles. And that can range from private development for commercial residential, state development for office space, mixed use, housing, things like that. But different ways to ask, would you support? I think one of the things that came out of reviewing all of these surveys is when asked as an either or, leaving it as open space only received about 6% of the support. But when asked as would you support if this is what happened, it got about 60%, the same as development. And I think that shows that there are a lot of opinions in the community, but there's not a lot of people that are really dug in, other than we don't want another correctional facility in Windsor. And when we take that input, as well as the community forums that have been held over the years, most recently with a report that was commissioned by the state to consider mixed use applications, there certainly were people who were opposed to development of any kind and just incorporating the acreage into the grasslands. But I would say the overwhelming trend in the comments was development. Housing, over the last couple of years, has certainly been at the forefront. And the underlying issue with all that is, yes, it is a pretty spot, but there's municipal sewer and an essentially brand new water system there. And given that the amount of money that has been committed to infrastructure and the fact that there's 800 acres of open space surrounding it, the idea to leave it open has been, I'm going to say, very fervently supported by a very small group. We'll put it that way. So on a number of fronts, having a development there helps our tax base. It helps just the human component of our community, of additional pool for hopefully people who want to be engaged in our community. It helps our hospital, our school, our local businesses that have all indicated a severe need for housing and employment, that it just checks an awful lot of boxes. And I think an opportunity to develop that into housing or some mixed use would be greatly appreciated. We've had a number of conversations over the years regarding the town taking ownership, and I think that's was kind of the focus behind this particular effort. And we would be willing partners in that, but as the state well knows, there are financial costs associated with that property and financial risk. So if there were a way to make development of the property more streamlined and more direct by changing the ownership, we're all on board for that, as long as there's, either, a wheelbarrow full of money that comes with it, or with that being unlikely, competitive or very favorable financing terms that, a TIF district and things like that, where we could certainly benefit in the financial aspects of the development, but also share and mitigate the risk with the state, the town, and a future developer. Just a real back of the envelope thing is we could easily fit $30 to $50 million in housing and commercial development on that site. And those kind of numbers would bring in between $300,000 and $400,000 both to the town and to the state every year in property taxes. And given what we've gone through, in recent years, that our annual budget is about $7 million. So an influx like that would be very helpful. And on the other side of it, our school capacity and our infrastructure, like our sewer treatment plant only runs at about a third capacity. So we have plenty of capacity there. The road system that would be required would be negligible. So basically our costs associated with that development would be very light. So there could be a real financial benefit to the town, as well as, to the state. Obviously, education is getting more and more expensive, and $300,000 may not be a lot every year, but it's better than paying out for that kind of thing. I think that about sums it up.
All right, that's great. Appreciate you bringing up the water and sewer, because that's a valuable investment that I think the state made in that property. And Windsor is the supplier of both utilities, right?
No, the sewer we are, and there's a number thrown around that it costs about $250,000 to keep the prison in mothballs, and of that $250,000, about $65,000 is a fee that the state pays to the town for access to our sewer system. Just like an apartment building is, if it's empty, the owner of the building still has to pay their sewer bill, and even though the prison hasn't been operating, that sewer bill has been consistent. The water.
I'm sorry. Did you say 65,000?
Yeah.
A year?
Yeah, a year. And back in 2014 or so, there was a bit of a disagreement between this town and the state regarding the water service. The state paid, I believe it was $1.4 million to build a new artesian well system and storage tank on the prison facility, and rather than connect to the town water system. And so that decision was made, but there's essentially a brand new artesian well water system that can service the site to this essentially the same degree that the sewer capacity can. And just however those systems work, they have to keep the water running throughout the prison facility so that the water flows through the storage tank, and they can't drain the storage tank without ruining the storage tank. So they have to keep the heat on in the building so the pipes don't freeze, all that kind of stuff. So that's just some of the idiosyncrasies of the property.
Okay, but that's a state, system, the water, potable water state.
Yeah, correct. I would expect.
All right, I'm glad to
transfer
have
would
that.
go to the town.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. So who wants to go next?
I guess I can go. So for the record, my name is Tom Kennedy. I'm the Director of Community Development in Montescutney Regional Commission. Montescutney Regional Commission has been involved in trying to figure out what to do with this property really since 2021. Back in 2021, House Institutions Committee asked our region if we would help to facilitate a process of state stakeholders to see what they would like to do with the site. And so with the help of BGS, we invited Department of Ag, Agency of Natural Resources, Department of Corrections, VHCB, the University of Vermont, and Department of Ag to go on site, look at the property, and talk about whether they felt that there were uses at the property that would be minimal to them, and might they want to either move their offices or do things like this. The University of Vermont and the Department of Ag said the ag lands that are on the property were of such that it really didn't make economic sense to them. A&R really did not have a lot of use for it except for possibly storage of equipment and the like. Oh, I didn't mention the state police. The state police does use the site for, I believe, training for their dogs and also firearm training. But the long and the short of it is that there didn't seem to be a single state agency that would like to take the facility over and to reconfigure it in a way that would make sense to them. What did come out of that, though, was that given the land base and the like, that there might be a potential for a public-private partnership where on a smaller scale, the state institutions could be involved on the site, and then there could either be commercial, industrial, or a housing component as well. And so there is a report out there on these findings. In 2023, the legislature asked the Montescutney Regional Commission to hire a consultant in to look into this concept of a public-private partnership. I sent the final report on that yesterday, and I don't know if people have that in front of them, and I don't know how much detail you want me to go through with it, but and I'll just start real general to begin this. So what we did is we looked at just existing conditions, sort of a typical planning type of thing, and what's there on the site now. We also did, using information that we got from BGS, is we scored all the buildings that were on the site, and there's a list of them in the report. And then we looked at just some scenario-based planning exercises where there could be very intensive housing with some state institutions and then also an agricultural component. And we went through different scenarios where there could be just a state and agricultural purpose, just a housing purpose, and the like. And then we went and sort of shopped these ideas around to the community, and we had meetings with the Board of Selectmen, with the Planning Commission. We had a public meeting, and then we met with local economic development officials and others. As Tom Marsh said, is that there doesn't seem to be much interest at all in any type of a correction facility type of process, but there was interest in some form of housing and the like, but not at the density that we initially were showing people. At one point, we had over 100 units on the site. And we then
Yeah,
also,
can I stop you there
Sure.
just one second? So the 100 units, is that what you showed us either last year or the year before?
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's not the plan that you just
Well,
sent.
so I will cut to the chase. Then what we did, and if you have do you have the report in front of you?
Well, I don't.
I sent
Let's
it
see who's out of it.
yesterday, but what we
Oh, so
found
you
out
just
is
sent
then
it.
we did what we call a development constraint map. And as people are aware, there's a solar facility on site there. It has I believe, a 30-year lease. I think they have about 20 years left on the lease. Then you have some steep slopes, and then you have streams and the like. So in the end, we found that really the amount of developable land on that site is really between 20 and 25 acres. And basically, the land that's really developable is the land that's in the wire fence. And then, which makes perfect sense because that's the best land to develop on. So there is a total of 118 acres that is owned by the Department of Corrections, or is used by the Department of Corrections. But a lot of that is either part now of a solar facility, or it has constraints to it. Um, so what we also found in talking with economic development officials and the like is there is both uncertainty and lots of pre-development costs associated with this site. So obviously there's lots of buildings on the site. Um, and then there's the razor wire on the site. There is very little interest in trying to do anything on the site with the razor wire there and with a lot of the buildings. Again, if you look at the inventory, many of the buildings on the site are in fairly poor shape. They don't really have much of a reuse. And then, of course, you have the former facility, or what we call the Alpha Dorm there. And people sometimes struggle with what could be a potential reuse for that. The other issue is what is the state of Vermont want to do with this property? Do they want to lease it to an individual? Do they want to sell it fee simple? And so that's just those types of things need to be settled. And then finally, and I think one of the larger one is just dealing with the local permitting and state permitting process. Right now, there would need to be changes made to the zoning bylaws and to the town plan to sort of allow some of these concepts to move forward. I can go through a lot
I know
more
the town
detail than
manager,
that if you like.
so I know the town manager, Tom, so we may be able to get through some of that,
Yep,
the zoning issue.
Expediency, no special treatment.
Fair enough.
So I think this is what you presented to us last year or the year before.
that's right. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And no, it was I remember it was very complete, and it's I mean that you can really do some stuff on that site.
Right. The other thing I
Are
just
you-
want to draw your attention to is on the back of the document, we have a link, and there's probably 20 megabytes of all the studies and so on that have been done. So we thought to help facilitate this, because as Tom Marsh said, there's been so many studies, is we have a link to those studies in sort of a Dropbox form.
Yeah, that's great. That's helpful. Does it include the most recent one from this year about the wildlife extension, the wildlife area?
No, we stopped in 2024. So we
Okay.
we have not updated it since 2024.
Are you familiar with that one? Do you need us to send it to you?
That would be great. Yes, I am not familiar with that.
Okay.
And Tom is, and could get it for him.
Yeah, and it's on our website and it's on the other committees.
Okay,
The
I'll get it off your
committee.
website. That's fine, Senator.
Okay. It's basically the Fish and Wildlife is interested in some of that into closing their donut hole more, basically.
Yes. Yeah, that had been discussed in 2023.
Okay. Well, this is
The-
cool too.
The area that I talked about that's developable excludes that area. So that
Yeah.
area is not part of what we're saying is developable property.
Yeah, it looks to me like Fish and Wildlife is interested in more area
Right.
than they had on your plan. But anyway, this is good because I was hoping we would be able to talk about that because we have 3 new committee members. The other person on the committee is Russ Ingalls, Senator Ingalls, and he was here last time, so he's familiar with
Right.
with. Okay, great. Do you want to let us? Is that the end of your testimony?
Yeah, I don't know how much time you want me to take, so I can.
Well, you're our only. This topic is the only topic we have. So.
Well, maybe we can do a round robin and then come back if you want to hear from others, or I can just keep
Sure.
going.
Sure. Does anyone have questions right now?
All right.
Actually, Tom, you said that there were, several stakeholders. What were those stakeholders that were part of this?
So the first, Senator, the first study or the second study?
Second.
So the first study was basically state agencies and economic development folks and the town. Bob Flynn from Springfield Regional Development Corporation. The second study is we had Bob Flint. We also talked with a redevelopment specialist out of Boston who specializes in these types of things. We talked to him, and I can't remember. There was a third economic development person that we talked to. As far as stakeholders are concerned, we both legislative bodies were a stakeholder. We went and we talked to them about some of our findings, got feedback from them, and we have a comment section in this report. And then we have this, as I said earlier, the select board, the planning commission, and the general public. So
Did we reach out to any of the businesses, industry, who are looking for housing, i.e. the hospital?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That's an oversight. Yes. So we talked with Mount Scottney Hospital, and we also talked with Dartmouth. So obviously both the hospitals are really looking for, what I'll call missing middle housing for their nurses and their doctors. We floated the idea of trying to maybe possibly have some type of partnership with them where they might be able to assist in funding the development in some way or shape or form. So yes, we did reach out to, so I live right next door to Windsor, and anyone you talk to as far as businesses are concerned, everybody's looking for housing. So whatever we can do to create more housing in a manner that's affordable, that would be great. And I say affordable in that we're really looking for housing, in the 350 to 550 range as far as pricing is concerned.
Tom, what was the response from Scottney and Dartmouth as possible partnerships funding wise for this?
They were they listened. I think they weren't going to commit themselves at this point, but they basically said, come on back and talk to us when you have some better ideas. And I think that one of the things that we mentioned in our final report is it would be helpful maybe if there could be almost like a redevelopment czar, where there could be an individual or a group that could basically try to bring focus onto this project. And that could go and do their due diligence as far as finding partners and things like this. Really, our efforts is to try to get a sense of where the community is, and how they feel about changing things there, and then looking at what some of the development costs associated with this. The 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 site is tough because of all the buildings in there. So we came up with a cost of about 1.5 million to raise the site with the razor wire. I From what we could gather, there was very little interest or no interest in keeping the Alpha Dorm. And that's going to be pretty expensive to take down.
Sure.
But say independently from the state studies, I had the Dean of the School of Agriculture from UVM come down and take a tour. We had 2 area private developers take a tour over the years. We had the Rockefeller Foundation come and take a tour. The state was involved in that one. And there were 2 consistent messages, and it's whether the state studies or these private developer studies, is that number of, it'll take about $2 million just to bring the site back to buildable. So everybody said that would either money would have to come with it or the site would have to be prepared for development. And that's why we continually advocated to at least some incremental movement on the demolishing of the known unsafe buildings. But the other thing that has always come up is there had been some interest, as long as the site was prepared, but the state's reluctance to sell. Like there had been discussions of leasing it, and nobody wanted to get involved at that level without an ownership stake, not a long-term lease.
Commissioner Manoli, I know we had talked about fair market value. Do we have a number of what that is?
So for the record, Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. We will have an insurance value. We have not done a fair market value.
Sure.
Do you have it on your grand list, even though it's not taxable? Do you estimate that on your grand list?
We have the pilot value is about 1.8 million, I believe. So we don't necessarily have it on our grand list, but we incorporate the state's values from the pilot list.
And so thank you, Tom, for that. So the pilot value is an insurance value. That's how we do the pilot.
Oh,
I'm not a tax expert,
Yeah.
and I don't want to speak on behalf of the Department of Tax. So then so with that 1.8, may I ask what you are getting for a pilot payment? 50,000, 60,000? I don't, right around there probably.
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe a little north of that, like somewhere around 80. I think our total pilot payment is 200 or 120,000, but we have like Mount Ascutney State Park, and some other properties. But I think all of the buildings related specifically to the prison, I have to back out, but it comes in somewhere 75 to 80,000.
Yeah, that would, so with, my advocates right now, just doing that would seem about right, just knowing, looking at that, at other properties. Madam Chair, could I ask one question too?
Please.
Thank you. So the, 65,000, for the sewer, is that part of an original agreement for the correctional facility to be there? Or is that just the state's portion that you're charging us? Because in some communities, we have agreements that go above and beyond where we pay for sewer and water. So that 65, I think it was 65,000 you referenced, Tom.
Yeah.
Is that just a direct payment of usage, or is that above and beyond?
It's payment for usage, I think, is
Okay.
It's based on the original agreement. The sewer line was extended specifically for the prison when it was built, and that
Yeah.
number has always been based on the capacity of the pipe. It's
Okay.
never been metered.
Yeah, so it is tied to the original agreement, which is, okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you. I was just thinking we've probably been paying that for years.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we have, it's
Yeah.
cost of, that's a whole, we can talk about
That's a whole
DOT, and that's a whole other conversation, right?
Okay,
But it is our best practices to contribute to communities
sure.
where
Yeah.
correctional facilities or,
and sewer systems and water systems rely on consistent and predictable revenue too. Okay, so the select board, Jeffrey Johnson.
Yes, I'm the vice chair of the select board. And I support what both Toms have said today. When I talk in public with people individually, I get a lot of support for housing as being an important factor in this whole equation. So I really don't have anything more to add to what's been said. I mean, I think all the information has been presented already, but I'm here just to say that I hear a lot of support for housing development there.
That's great. Well, thank you for being here, and congrats on the. I think Wyndham Windsor just finished a housing development in Windsor, right?
Yeah.
And so that'll be perpetually affordable. I don't know how many units it was or is.
25, with 6 of those, I think, are for homeless, people transitioning from homelessness.
Uh-huh.
So a total of 25,
Okay, great. That's every bit helps.
right?
Yes, and we're hearing loud and clear. I mean, housing is critical. Okay, anything else?
I
Go ahead.
I didn't have anything else. But I appreciate the backstory, which for me, I just is above and beyond the report. Just having some questions. I'll continue to have questions. I've talked to both Toms, and Jeffrey concerning it as well. So more than anything, we need to. I feel that we need to move on this. It's been far too long of being in limbo, and maybe Tom Kennedy, I think maybe right in having some kind of czar that is a point person. I thought it was Tom Kennedy, and forgive me, that is gathering information and talking on consistency with stakeholders. Because what has been happening is it starts like a ball of fire and then it kind of loses steam. So we just need somebody to continue to bang that drum.
Okay, thank you. And we did have, just so you know, Michael Quinn, are you folks familiar with Michael Quinn? Okay, he did want to testify. I just got the message today, so I called him, but it was too late. But he can, if you let him know, if you send us his email, we can correspond with him. Then what was the other thing? Just please do make sure that you have that most recent fish and wildlife study, because that was from this year. And it had some interesting subjects. So this is definitely on our agenda. We're at the end of the session, so I wouldn't expect something to happen necessarily this session, but we can we'll discuss what is possible. But it's really good to know, and we can talk again if that would be helpful. Yes, go ahead.
Also, so Mount Scottney, we've been involved in this for so long. We're more than willing, if you have some additional information you'd like to get, during we'll call it the off season of the legislature, we can help. But one of the things, and I guess I'm going to put this on to to both the House and Senate committees is until a decision is made, nobody wants to do anything.
Yeah.
And so we really need some type of action one way or the other on the part of the legislature to decide what they want to do. Because until they know, there's just too many questions and no answers. And just things start getting to be more and more expensive. That's one comment I have. The second comment I had is a couple of years ago, there was a lot of discussion about starting to remove some of the buildings on an annual basis to reduce the cost in the end of doing it. And I don't know whatever happened to that, but whatever we could do to try to show that there's some change going on up there, if you're thinking of doing something with that site, that certainly would be helpful. And if we could possibly do it in a smaller incremental phase rather than all at once, because I know how tough state budget is these days, but because in the end, the state is going to have to contribute in dealing with some of the structures on there for it to be sold or leased or whatever.
Right. No, that's a great idea, especially doing what we can do in the summertime. I mean, there are likely things that can be done in the summer. That's a really good suggestion. Did you?
Yes. I'm sorry.
And
Go
I
ahead,
certainly
Tom.
can work with Senator Majors. So.
Yes, absolutely. And after this, I'll reach out and, have us, meet and quite frankly, even just, last couple of days, Commissioner Manoli made some, suggestions that might help on several things. So I think that, that I just want you to know that this is a focus of mine. It was a focus through before I got here, and you're living it. Your community is living it, and it is at the forefront of what I want to do, and have some direction sooner rather than later. I think the town needs it, and the community needs it. So we'll figure something out.
Okay. Are you saying bye or are you asking?
I wanted to offer a quick story to provide a little perspective. I don't know how many people know that Windsor was the home of the first penitentiary in the country. And
I do know that, and that was the first Wyndham Windsor building in Windsor, actually. But go ahead.
That when the state decommissioned that prison, their original intention was, I think they were demolishing it at a cost of about $110,000 back in the 70s. And I guess at the last minute, they decided to just advertise it and to say, hey, this is available. Give us a bid. Tell us what you're going to do. And a company out of Boston answered the bid, and they paid $27,500 for that building. And now it's a spectacular piece of architecture. It's 85 or 65 apartments. That the state has done this once already in our community. It just took the initiative to go out and find out what the best use could be and then get behind the idea. So we've seen the success in what I would think is a more challenging site. So to Tom's point, to Joe's point, if we can make this a priority and get it moving, I think there's, something really great can happen here. It's such a beautiful site.
All right, it is a beautiful site, and that's a great bookend. Thank you. Okay, anything else, folks? Okay, so thank you very much, and we are